Order, order. Welcome to the HS2 Select Committee. We welcome this afternoon the Right Honourable Cheryl Gillan, MP for Cheshire Amersham, well and duly re-elected. Welcome, Cheryl, again. And you're going to talk to us a bit about tunnels.
Yep, thank you very much, Chairman. First of all, I'm very grateful. I hope I won't take up too much of your time, but when we were talking earlier in this new session of Parliament, I volunteered just to come and do an informal briefing to you about what you're going to see when you visit my constituency. Some of it you will know already, and it's intended to set the background and the scene for you when you come on Monday. I gather that you're going to have a full complement of the committee. It's expected on Monday, I hope. And, of course, you're going to meet a large number of my constituents. I know you were in my constituency briefly when you were visiting Aylesbury Vale with David Liddington, but that was just on the edge, and you're going to be starting at the other end of my constituency, coming off the train at Little Chalfont and going first to see the ventilation shaft sites and working your way back along the line. I've got some slides which just help illustrate the background. I'm not sure who's working the slides, but thank you so much. I'll give you a clue. The first slide for the committee just really sets out the broader environmental scene. This is a picture of King's Ash in my constituency, which on the current plans will be very close to the proposed site of a waste dump. And the quote is actually from the HS2 Independent. Yes.
We can't call it sustainable something or other. Placement, but dump, yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Sir Peter, you'll know I'm not an expert, a technical expert.
Dump will do.
I think a spoiled dump will do. It's not meant to be prejudicial. It is, in fact, a spoiled dump. But thank you for your correction. The quote is actually from the independent assessor, Golder Associates. They did the summary of the issues raised by the comments on the environmental statement in April 2014. And I think the thing to remember is that you have only seen, possibly, the Golder report, which was just 112 pages long. And I thought it was fair, as it's chiefly the environment that we're bothered about, to place this in context, because the Golder Associates report actually summarised 21,833 responses to the environmental consultation. And the environmental consultation itself, if you've seen it, was 50,000 pages long. And nearly 22,000 responses, which have been distilled down, don't actually give you the full flavour of the objections on environmental grounds for the damage that is being done. However, it's not my main petition today. It really is a scene-setting session from the perspective of the Chilterns. And I would like to say that since this project started, HS2 Limited has, of course, given us some gains that have provided environmental protection. And you should know the original plans were coming out at the back of Old Amersham, which is indeed a Doomsday Book town, was coming out in the middle of a football pitch. And after looking at the geology and topography, one of the Secretaries of State, Justine Greening, extended the tunnel. But I have to say the tunnel then stopped in Mantles Wood, and I've still not to this day, neither have any of the engineers that have been working on the tunnelling proposals that I'll talk about later. None of us have ever known why it stopped in Mantles Wood. There was never, ever a reason that was given. The next slide is to show you what will happen for 2030. Here you have two pictures juxtaposed. One is, in fact, Mantles Wood. And I know some people in this room will have been to Mantles Wood and are familiar with it. And you'll be going into Mantles Wood on Monday. And I'm afraid you've missed the bluebells, so it won't be looking quite as pretty as this. But on the other side is the HS1 line in Kent. And I think the lady in the foreground gives you some idea of the size of the equipment and the barriers needed to accommodate a high-speed railway. I think also to remember that High Speed 1 and High Speed 2 now will see a large number of roads built to accommodate the access and maintenance of the railway. And certainly, as this is the only AONB on this route that is affected, I think it's important to put it in perspective and to see the juxtaposition of what the landscape could look before and after. The next slide is a picture of Leather Lane. That has been there since Saxon times, and it's the route between two villages, Great Missenden and the Lee, and you'll be seeing both those areas on Monday. And of course, picture HS1 is a classic picture of next to it of the construction through Kent. I appreciate those look like two complete extremes, but that is in fact the sort of scar that will be left on the landscape during the construction. What HS2's plans do at the moment is fail to protect and enhance and preserve the AONB. And I think the right thing to do is to protect it to a greater degree. I think it would be a wrong precedent to set if we fail to protect this asset for future generations. Quite apart from the environmental disruption, there's going to be a huge loss of economy, and I think on the route you're going to hear from some of the businesses and some of the people who will be affected economically. We've got independent reports showing the economic impact, and I think that will be placed before you at some stage during the evidence. And certainly there's also going to be some evidence from locals about the problems with our chalk stream in the aquifer. We've got two chalk streams in Chesham and Amersham, and the Misbourne is the one that will be affected by this. It feeds into the Colne, which in turn supplies 22% of London drinking water. And over the 23 years that I've been MP for Chesham and Amersham, we have protected this to the nth degree. I mean, so much so that in the 90s we had bedlining trials, because with chalk streams, anybody that knows the ecology of a chalk stream, sometimes they disappear completely, and I've walked the riverbed and picked up crisp packets and rubbish from this river, but then they will suddenly come back up. And on your visit, you're going to go into Little Missenden and you're going to pass a mill where you will see the trout jumping. I'm assured by the owner. He says he will make sure the trout are jumping for you when you go through. I've challenged him on this. I have money on it. I'm not sure they will, but it'll be up to you. I think that the other thing, before we move on to the next slide, is to say that many people feel that the mitigation that has been highlighted, and even highlighted to me again in the letter the Prime Minister sent to me recently about this, is really not all that it appears, and certainly constituents don't think that. There's a feeling that because HS2 Limited and the Department of Transport say that over 80% of the route in the AONB will be below ground level, that it is sufficiently protected. But as you will see from later on, that is actually not the case. And to produce green tunnels and the cuttings that are proposed in the current HS2 proposition, you will find that it is not sufficiently protected, I hope. Also, I think to say you're replacing the ancient woodland that you will see with 2 million trees is also sounds marvellous, and certainly from the Woodland Trust perspective and everybody else, they'll welcome the 2 million trees, but it will take more than 400 years to get those trees to anything like the woodlands that will be going. So I hope I've established for you that what you're seeing is a national asset and something which is irreplaceable and will be damaged. The next slide is a prize for anybody that can name the first person pictured there. No? Claire Mackley, well done. I thought you might do it. This is just a brief history of AONBs. And I think it's important to remember you're going out and seeing something that has been protected by something that was started 70 years ago. It was very important in the post-war period that we protected key parts of our landscape. And only a designation of a national park comes higher in the hierarchy. And this is the nearest AONB to London, and therefore most likely to sustain damage as we develop out of the urban area. I think what is also important here is it's both Conservative and Labour governments have sought to strengthen these protections, as you can see. We're also a signatory in this country to the European Landscape Convention, and in establishing that, we said we would promote the place of landscape protection management and planning in all aspects of public policy in this country. I think that it is also good if when you're out there and in that environment, I think particularly for you, Mr. Sims, and you, Mr. Bellingham, I know you have AONBs in both your constituencies. So I think, whether it's Norfolk Coast or the Dorset AONB, you're going to have a pretty good feel of what it might look if it was in your AONB, and I think that's quite an important aspect of it. For me, also, in both the manifestos, Mr. Mearns, you all know in the Labour manifesto, it said, we feel passionately about our local landscapes, our open spaces and wildlife. We will support the work of the Natural Capital Committee to protect and improve wildlife habitats and green spaces. We're going to see plenty of those on the Chesham and Amersham group. And I don't think I need to remind other members of the committee that we had so many pledges in the Conservative manifesto that it became embarrassing. To protect our environment for future generations, to build new railways in a way that limits as far as possible their impact on the environment. We will maintain national protections for areas of outstanding natural beauty. We'll put in place stronger protections for our natural landscapes. We will build new infrastructure in an environmentally sensitive way, all from our manifesto. So I hope I'm giving the committee and HS2 Limited a golden opportunity to complete what we put out in that award-winning manifesto. Sorry, Mr. Mearns. Well,
it gives me a chance to criticise them if they don't come up with the goods.
Well, there you go. There you go. But the point is, as we get a bit further on, I think when you're going out to see this in the flesh, I think you'll see that there is an ability to complete and fulfill those promises and pledges that were made in that manifesto. The next one is something which I hope you will be familiar with, and that is the AONB. It is, as you can see, it covers a wide stretch. And I think it's fair to say that when, in 2009, Labour first promoted this project, there were 3 routes, and one of them actually went through a much narrower part of the AONB. And as you can see, it was further north. It was further north.
The gap between roughly around Buckinghamstead.
Yes.
Ashridge Gap. I'm not sure if it was called something or other, but
it was the bit that is at the narrow point of the AONB. It runs by Berkhamsted and up to Tring. It was along there. That was one of the proposals. And of the 3 routes, the final one was across the widest part of the AONB, which was extraordinary. And I mean, there you can see, just on that slide, I appreciate we put lots of words on there, but it sets out for you there the nature of this AONB. And it's a landscape which is attractive to both local visitors and the people that live there, but also many visitors come out from London. You will have,
Wendover
yes.
and Aylesbury.
Yeah, it's very much common. I mean, David Lidington, who is my colleague in the next seat, as you know, when you were on that visit there, we have done a lot of work together on this, because one of the complexities of having a project like this across a large number of constituencies is you get conflicting views, and there have been conflicting views. Although I think many more of the community and the statutory bodies are starting to move towards what they feel would be a good compromise and a good solution, and I hope we'll offer the solution for the committee when they're looking at this, for my community and also for HS2.
When you talk about compromise, Cheryl, do you mean people agreeing with you?
No, not necessarily. But it's a woman's prerogative to try and get people to agree with me. But I think there are so many common factors across this that people have realised that they may not be able to have everything they want. And if they can't have everything they want, they do want whatever is best and what can be achieved. And I appreciate not everything will be achievable. I would like the whole project to be cancelled. But I know I can't have that. Failing that, I do want the best protections. I think you will see there is a broad-ranging appeal of this area as well. I mean, it just covers everything. You're going to see medieval churches, you're going to see hill forts, you are going to see there's a strong cultural heritage in the area. And also, keep an eye out when you're looking for there is a well-maintained network of public rights-of-way. In the Chilterns, we've got over 2,000 kilometres of public rights-of-way, and there are rural lanes on which we cycle, and horse riding and walking. And there's 2,883 hectares of open access land available for informal recreation, which is a pretty large area when you think about it. There are large areas in the area which have been opened by the National Trust, the Forestry Commission, and even though you won't see this, the Woodland Trust, Penn Woods, was the first major wood that the Woodland Trust bought when we campaigned to keep that ancient woodland back in the 90s, and I worked with locals on that very hard. So there is a huge history of protecting this area. You should also be aware, and you'll be wanting to ask the questions, there are 3 national, 7 regional and 25 plus local walking and cycling routes that are impacted by the current HS2 plans. I don't know quite whether we're going to drive down the High Street in Great Missenden, but we've got the Royal Dahl Museum there, which you will see. And certainly many of the children get taught in outdoor classrooms and get taught in the area. The Duke of Edinburgh Award is run quite extensively in the area, and you never know what you might just pick up. But we've also got facts and figures for you on the tourism, and which will play into the disbenefits. The next slide just shows you what people think. And I think it's fair to say the original decisions on routing were rushed and driven by speed. I always remember asking the immortal question, why does it go straight through my constituency? And I was told it has to go straight through your constituency because of speed. I think the argument is moved on to capacity, and still it's maintained it follows existing transport corridors, but you'll see the A413, you'll make up your mind what you think about whether that is a major transport corridor. But the route choice is still controversial locally. Many local people feel that that the original route assessments, which I think looked at the M1 corridor, would have been far less damaging environmentally. But these people have all come together now, having raised a whole range of options to mitigate the impact on the AONB, to look at the tunnelling solutions. The next slide just shows you some of the current plans and what they will do to the AONB. And I just want you to have those in the back of your mind when you're having a look at this and you're going around the constituency. There will be permanent alteration of the landscape, and there will be urbanisation and degradation of the AONB. Only 45% of the AONB will be in a deep tunnel coming out in Mantles Wood. The remaining 55% is above ground. There's 11.4 kilometres of surface works, and that involves 2.4 kilometres of green tunnels, a kilometre of viaducts, and 1.7 kilometres of embankments and shallow cuttings. And I'm sure you'll have all the details, so you will actually know what is being proposed. 30% of all the ancient woodland that will be affected by HS2 is actually in this area and in my constituency. Also, what you won't see, but what I think is worth pointing out to you, is many of my constituents can't understand why the current deep bore tunnel comes out in Mantles Wood, but also unnecessarily comes out there at a very steep gradient. And I've been told that it's one of the steepest gradients on any railways anywhere in the country. But again, I think you need to have a look at that. And the spoil dump will be shown to you and where that will be and what the impact will be. You're going to be going to South Heath. And I just want to point out to you that South Heath is in the heart of the AONB, and it's really severely affected. There are 500 households there, and I should imagine many of them will have taken a day off work. In fact, I know already of many constituents who will have taken a day off work to just come and talk to you and just let you see what the effect is there. The ventilation shafts that you will see back at the beginning are actually less controversial and pale into insignificance compared to this end of the constituency, although I don't want to underestimate the feeling of people living around it and their determination to have a say. So it'll be, the first one is near Epilepsy Society that you'll be seeing. The second one is in a very undisturbed area. The third one is going to be next to Amersham Hospital, at the end of Old Amersham. And the fourth one is opposite Chardelot's, which was owned by the Tyrrwhit Drakes, and they were the people that bought it when it was a rotten borough, Chesham and Amersham, and we came to this house. So it's an interesting place. But I suppose that the summation of this slide is just to say it's only partly protected. It's not fully protected. And that's really what the community is going to be focusing on, I hope, in most instances. The next one is there just to show you what you're going to see when you're out there. I'm not going to explain the hierarchy of tunnelling. It's something which many of my voluntary groups and the Chiltern Conservation Board and local authorities are familiar with. And I think you're going to have this explained to you by people who want to show that they're opening up a range of options for the committee to look at and consider, and HS2. And the picture again is of the bluebells in Mantles Wood. The mitigation hierarchy is all backed up with engineering reports, but I know that HS2 has been looking at many of these in detail now. And I think what I'm saying to you is this is the opportunity to hear and listen to a community-backed solution, or community-backed solutions, which I think is good. The next three slides, I'm just going to take you through three of the tunnelling options, and I'm just going to talk about something else, and this is merely to set the scene. I am not an engineer, I am not a tunnelling expert, but I rely on the information that is provided to me and the groups and the people that I work with. And I think it's important at this stage to acknowledge that Emma Crane, who is sitting next to me, is a lawyer and has been my legal advisor along the way here. She does a tremendous amount of work with HS2 Action Alliance, and she has been putting in a tremendous amount of work on this project right across the board, not just in my constituency but in other areas of the constituency as well. And she has drawn together particularly something which I think the committee had earlier, and I just wanted to make sure you'd seen this, the Chiltern Board tunnel options. Have you seen that? You've got that? And I'll update that for you at some stage, and we'll update that later on. The first one, option one, is the Chilterns Long Tunnel, and as you can see, it was first launched in April 2014, and it preserves the whole of the AONB. You can see who it's proposed by, what it is, the costs that it may incur, the alignment, and what we believe is HS2 Limited's objections. So I think it summarises it quite neatly. The engineering reports were produced by Brett Associates, and there is a tourism report which concludes an income of £80 million will be lost if the tunnelling does not go ahead. And there are health and well-being studies that are available, and hydrology reports. And we are awaiting another report which may be available for you. I'm not sure whether it will be available on Monday or later on, from SQW consultants that are going to quantify the disbenefits of the tunnel. I know this is quite a tricky area, but I think it is important to look at that, because I think it's going to be in the order of £291 million worth of savings, thereabouts as an estimate, and that has to be offset against the additional costs of the tunnelling. And I think that what is good is HS2 Limited have now responded with tunnelling reports that provide much more detailed cost and data, but I'm not sure on what assumptions they're based, and perhaps that is something that comes with the technical evidence much further down the line. The Chiltern Long Tunnel, in fact, reduces the risk to the water supply. It actually provides a much lower gradient, can make the chains go faster. But however, there's an underground firefighting point that is needed, at Little Missenden, plus 3 additional vents. I think that this is the best solution. This offers the best mitigation, but it may not be exactly where the engineers or any negotiation between the statutory authorities, the opinion of this committee and HS2 Limited ends up. The second one is the Crag Tunnel or T3 Tunnel, which is the next slide. Again, the format is the same, who it's proposed by, what it is, what the costs possibly are, what the advantages are, and what the objections are, we think. The advantage of T3 and T3I is that this is absolutely technically feasible and environmentally preferable. And as far as I'm aware, if this tunnelling solution was adopted, there would be less need for extra consultation, and it would not affect operational efficiency. So this tunnel is beginning to look as if it is a possible preferred option. I think the key thing is to look at who it's been proposed by and to realise that there has been an absolutely astronomical amount of money raised locally in the community to go into these studies. And it would require an intervention gap at Durham Farm, which is the same base as the Chiltern Long Tunnel fighting point. But I think that HS2, who I think have been trying to cooperate on these tunnelling proposals, have concluded that the scheduling is no longer an issue on the T3 tunnel, and it can be done from both ends, and so it wouldn't delay the build schedule. So this, even though in the hierarchy of tunnels it's less preferable than the Chiltern Long Tunnel, this actually becomes a great solution for the area. And as far as I understand it, won't require a new environmental statement, and there is no issue on the scheduling. So that is worth looking at. Now, the Reaper Tunnel is the last tunnel in the 3 options. Yeah.
Cheryl, is that HS2 figure of 349 million? Is that? Do you accept that figure, or do you think that can be got down quite a bit?
As far as I know, I think that the 349 figure does not include the offset of what we're hoping to give in the disbenefits study that's coming.
Right.
But they would need to confirm that too.
And that's the net figure as well, is it? Having deducted the costs of the things that they won't now have to spend money on if they go with this option.
That is the figure they've given us as the additional cost of the tunnel.
I suspect we will be going into costings.
I think you will.
In endless detail for hours in this
I'm
commission.
so sorry.
No. I just wanted to get an early steer.
Yeah. Well, as far as I'm concerned, this is the extra cost of the tunnelling, but it doesn't take in what would obviously arise from it. First of all, the disbenefits and the cost to the community, which is not on top, but also the savings you would have in terms of, I'll come on to it a bit later, but you would have to spend less time in committee, which would be attractive. But also, I think what would be really important is our local economy would not suffer as much, because one of the things that I wanted to show in the background is we actually derive a lot of income from tourism, and we have the independent studies, and that will be affected greatly. Plus, of course, HS2 Limited and the government have already purchased some properties. They will have those properties that will improve in value if HS2 is in a tunnel. And I think there's an awful lot of mathematics we're going to have to go through, Mr. Sims, to balance the books. But I'll get to that again at the end. This, I think, is an elegant solution, and certainly, even though the costings don't take into account the non-market costs, I think it will be good. The last one is the Reaper Tunnel, and again, 2 of the worst affected areas you'll go through, Hyde Heath and South Heath. They're really badly affected by this, and it's their collaboration, and they have paid for I think there's 12 local residents groups, and they represent 800 people, and they've paid for expert engineering reports and other reports completely privately. This is actually the fallback position. If all else fails, this is the least costing option, and it was born out of the desperation of a community that really is the most badly affected community, I think, in many ways, although I don't want to set myself up against any other communities along the line. It is a 4.1 kilometre extension, and it just comes out in where the land naturally falls away. And HS2 Limited's figures say it cost 61 million, but REPA said it was cost neutral. As far as I can remember, the details of the assumptions on which the costings were based were not provided by HS2 to REPA. But this is where we thought that the tunnel would come out back in 2012 when we got the extra tunnelling from Amersham. That was the natural assumption, that where the land fell away it would come out. So you'll be able to see that. The engineering reports have been prepared by an engineer called Rodney Craig, and there's a further report coming out this month, and I'm not quite sure, I haven't seen it, but I think it might already be with the residents. And the SQW report that I referred to you about, the quantifying the disbenefits of not extending the tunnel, will also be available, and it will apply to this tunnel as it will to the others. It requires one additional vent at Annie Bailey's, and you will see Annie Bailey's. We're stopping at Annie Bailey's, and you will hear from some of the local residents there. That's a restaurant that is now shut up and boarded up. And this solution offers protection to the ancient woodlands and 500 plus households. It also actually removes the need for that spoil dump that I was talking about earlier on. And I think I've been fair with the areas of contention as far as HS2 is concerned, although I know REPA is planning to challenge the assumptions they've made. HS2 has just produced a report on this tunnel, and I'm not sure whether it was on the correct version of this tunnel, so if we're looking at anything and anything is talked about, I hope the HS2 people will be able to comment on that when we're out on the visit and on the bus. This still achieves greater protection for this area, but it's at a lower cost, and although it's an easier solution, it's not the ideal one. However, not on your slides, and just pausing there, because the thing you should realise about these tunnelling options is they are living. Every day something goes a bit further. And it amazes me as to how these have developed, and actually how many areas of the community have come together behind various options. And there is some work that has been done, which is going to, again, look at the options and provide certain solutions. There's going to be some work discussed called the Chiltern Long Tunnel version 2, which requires no underground firefighting point. So we haven't just stopped with these three options. There is going to be a fourth option, which, as I understand it, has been discussed by some of the statutory bodies. The advantage of all these tunnels, though, is that they provide the edge-to-edge alignment that we want, which covers the whole of the AONB. And I think that is one of the most important aspects of the tunnels that are being promoted by the groups. I probably should move on to the next slide, which just tells you what I hope people in the Chilterns are expecting from you. They really want to have a fair hearing. I think the early days of engagement with the promoter really did impact badly on our communities, and I think they were very frightened, and I think they were not often ideal in the way in which they were conducted. And you're going to have to, at some stage, make a decision that is made in the national interest. This is not just about being NIMBYs. This is a national asset that needs to be protected. And when the community has come forward with genuine and effective alternatives, and all political parties are saying that they want to consult communities better, I think it's got to be given a very fair hearing. And what they would like is a decision to extend the tunnelling to protect the OMB. But it's a very attractive proposition if we can get agreement, because it's going to result, I think, in significant time savings, because so many of the petitions that we have are talking about tunnelling and protecting the AOMB. I think also, to be fair, that HS2 Limited has been doing some really good work on the tunnelling. And as I indicated, I think that what they have been saying, particularly on what is now becoming known as the government's proposed scheme, V2T3I, I think that their attitude and the work they've been doing on T3I is really encouraging, and they've certainly encouraged many of the statutory consultees in the area, and I hope there's a deal. I think that we could have an agreement if HS2 Limited decided to go for the tunnelling, and I think a meeting and discussion at the highest level between decision makers and HS2 Limited, if they came in with T3I, as it's now called, which is that middle tunnel that we were talking about, but with improvements, I think that there could be a compromise and a deal to be done. And that's what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in ending up at the end of this with a national asset and an area of our country whose efforts and time and money and anguish is totally ignored. And I have detected, I think, a change in tone of voice from HS2 Limited and the promoter, and also politically as well. The Prime Minister, who I wrote to immediately after the election, came back to me and said, I understand the Chilterns Tunnel petitioners are due to be heard before the Select Committee soon. I can assure you that the government remains committed to listening to the views of all those affected by the scheme. And I think that is pretty powerful. And I know from my conversations with colleagues that a solution would be the best way to protect this area. So my last slide is what the government's advisors on protected landscapes actually say. And I think it's worth reiterating that this is a planning decision on a really grand scale. And as the authority making that planning decision, I think we need to make sure that the statutory protections and the planning considerations in the NPPF 115 and 116 are taken into account. And Natural England has reinforced there what an extended board tunnel would do. Now, an extended board tunnel has that magic word board, and I don't want to bore you because you on this committee have spent hours and hours and hours going over every inch of this railway. And I think that you have a huge burden to carry in terms of the decisions you have to make, but I also think you've got a golden opportunity, as I do think the promoter has. You're coming out to see us on Monday. If there was an agreement from the promoter with our main authorities at a meeting between now and then, you'd be coming out to see what was being protected, and we could move forward on that basis. If there was an agreement that an extended board tunnel would provide a solution, you would save an awful lot of agony in terms of hearing from petitioners, because every petitioner has paid their £20. And although it may be good to try and get those petitioners gathered together, they've paid their £20 because they want to have their voice heard. And I think that... yeah, but, you know, Sir Peter, you and I have been here a long time. You've been here longer than me. You can appreciate that I could speak at 4 o'clock in the morning on this subject, as could you. And it makes no difference. And the passion would run high. They'd be here at 4 a.m. in the morning, I can assure you. I can assure you. But I just think, finally, just to say that we should bear in mind that we should be giving great weight, as it says in paragraph 115, great weight to conserving the landscape and scenic beauty in national parks, the Broads and areas of outstanding natural beauty, which have the highest status of protection in relation to landscape and scenic beauty. I hope you're going to enjoy the visit. I think you're going to have a good lunch. I think HS2 Limited has checked out the pubs, and you're having lunch in the Missenden. I know you're going to be on and off the bus like a yo-yo, and now I physically don't think I can accompany you into the middle of Mantles Wood as I'm waiting for a hip replacement. But I just hope that you will be able to see just what you're being asked to protect and how special it is. I appreciate that every inch of this railway is special to the people that live approximately, but this is the only AONB, and the route north of Birmingham doesn't go through an AONB, so this will be the only AONB that will be violated by this infrastructure project.
Okay,
I hope that's been helpful.
Thank you for setting the scene, and clearly a lot of these detailed matters are for wide discussion, endless discussion, I suspect, another day. Could I just ask Mr. Mulder just one question, which if a quick answer can't be given today, perhaps it could be given to us as we get on the bus on Monday. Why did the tunnel stop at Mantles Wood? Is there a simple solution today, or is there a longer answer that you'll be able to give us on the bus?
Well, there is a short answer. I suspect it's not going to be in itself terribly helpful. The short answer is that it strikes the balance that we think is the right one between engineering, environmental, operational factors, and that's where the product of that assessment led us. As I say, that probably isn't quite as illuminating as you wanted, but I'm sure we can try and
give a bit more
go a little bit more on the detail of that when you go
Just
inside.
in perspective, I was having a meeting with a very senior engineer this morning, and I was saying I didn't know why I should come out in Mantles Wood. I still don't know why I came out in Mantles Wood, and he said he'd been asking that right since the beginning of the project, and he didn't know either, so it wasn't just me.
What I will say, of course, is that there is in volume 9 of the environmental statement, which relates to the Central Chilterns, there's quite an extensive summary at section 2.6 of the consideration of various options, including the crag option as it was at that time, and the reaper option. And amongst that is a reference to some of the considerations on matters like Mantles Wood. There's also a broader consideration in volume 3 of the environmental statement of the effects of the proposed railway as it passes through the Chilterns area of outstanding natural beauty, having regard in particular to the value that is placed upon the AONB under statutory and national and regional and local policy. So we're obviously going to be building on that as we prepare our case for a month, for a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks' time. Okay. And what I am, if I may, will you allow me to say this, obviously very pleased to hear from Mrs. Gillan that the view on of those that she has spoken to is that there is a mutual cooperative approach being taken here to sharing information and to considering each other's points of view. I'm perhaps a little less optimistic than she is that we will reach agreement on any particular extended tunnel solution. But I also, of course, note that the committee is going to hear the main promoters of each of the options that she has mentioned, is going to hear them in a relatively short set of hearings over the course of, I think, about 2 weeks. And I, for my part, have some confidence that having heard the evidence and the debate over the course of that relatively short period, the committee will have heard all the key points that it needs to hear in order to form a pretty clear view as to whether something needs to be done to change. So I think we perhaps ought to be, there's room for some optimism about how long the substance of these arguments is likely to take.
May I just say that stating the obvious, though, that if the promoter did arrive at an outline solution saying that they accepted in principle that an extended tunnel would offer those protections, there would be an awful lot of time saving. Okay. From all perspectives. And certainly the work that HS2 Limited has done already in terms of, as I say, looking at options that don't affect their scheduling, that merely have cost implications. And can I just say that once there are cost implications, then there are all sorts of ways that can be looked at and solutions that can be looked at, so that it doesn't necessarily fall on the public purse.
Okay, well, we're looking forward to our visit on Monday, and we're all very reassured about lunch, aren't we? Yeah, yeah, absolutely, good. Yeah. So I think we've got to move on and hear the next petitioner. Thank you very much, Cheryl. We now have Mr. and Mrs. Howie, who've been sitting patiently at the back all day, I think. One doesn't usually expect to find a farm in the middle of London.
Absolutely. Ian and Susan Howie, myself, Susan, and Mr. Royal, who we'll come on to in a minute or two. We are the tenants of Park Lodge Farm and Juice Farm, with Mr. Royal owning the house at Juice Farm House.
Okay.
So that's where we come from, which is the house that's to be removed to make way for the tunnel, for the viaduct. We've been there since 2004. We're dairy farmers, milk Jersey cows, 180. Of that, we provide a service to the community in terms of education. We do school visits, and the farm was formed in 1974 specifically for that purpose. I think Ken Livingston was actually one of the people that founded the farm there in 1974. Good or bad. It's got a rotary parlour, which means the cows milk on a roundabout, and it's got a viewing gallery for around 150 kids. And the house that we live in was the school for that prior to us becoming tenants in 2004.
And that's Park Lodge, is it?
That's Park Lodge Farm. Park Lodge Farm and Juice Farm are one and the same.
Mm-hmm.
Park Lodge Farm is what we call it. There is just over 240 hectares of that, and it's in a farm business tenancy of 25 years that was intended to be increased in 2011 to 50 years, but this came in.
Okay.
And a decision wasn't finalised on that till this has been completed. That we lose on up to last week, it was around 87 hectares as a result of various things that goes on. 87 hectares of around 100, I think, in the Colne Valley. So we are the biggest part of what takes place under HS2 in Colne Valley, I suspect. We have a short video just outlining Park Lodge Farm and what we do. We're a small family farm. There's myself, my wife, and my two daughters, who are both, one's just finished a degree in agriculture, Michelle, and my other daughter's actually at Raceheath today, just finishing another agricultural course. So we're very much ingrained in farming. We have been since the day we were born. I hope you understand this. I'm from a very small community in southwest Scotland, and as soon as I lose the voice, I'll go home. We've been there, as I say, since 2004. Came down here to St Albans in 96. And gained our first tenancy in 2002 in another area that's actually being taken over just in Tring. So I know Chesham and Amersham very well. And got the opportunity to help establish the farm that's there today in 2004. We've got a short video of that if you want to show Park Lodge. As you can see from here, we're just going to come round onto the farm. The land that you see that looks a bit horrible at the bottom of it is where the sustainable placement was going to take place. This is part of a landfill site that's within within the farm. It's called New Year's Green Landfill, of which there are approximately 80 hectares. Sustainable placement was still continuing on the bottom right-hand corner to the main road, which is Harville Road. Oh, sorry.
You get picked up.
Sorry, it's this area here to Harville Road. The landfill then follows on to the left, but keeps this side of Harville Road. If you look, you can see the pylon in the distance here, and this is where the substation for the electric substation would go. Jew's farm is just slightly to the farmhouse is just slightly to your left. You can see the Howick lake behind and where the rail would run, and it follows through to the trees on the left. You can see the civic community site, which was the entrance to the old New Year's Green landfill site. Highway Farm, as you've been talking about this week, which is the Dogs Trust, of which this whole roads goes behind it. Okay, it's a quick one through, just to give you it, or whatever. Just moving on, you can see we've obviously got this slide. And to put that into detail, what you've seen to begin with was up here where we say Park Lodge Farm. The green area is the sustainable placement, which has been changed as I'm aware. We got information of that 8 days ago. I don't know if that changes is for sure or not. But anyway, that's supposedly where the sustainable placement, that's the start of New Year's Green Lane landfill site, and it extends to the bottom right hand corner to the other green sustainable placement to the south. Okay, so that's what we call the workings of New Year's Green Lane landfill site. All that. Could we get presentation 1?
Which one?
Which is the next slide? Can we follow? As you can see here, this shows you the area that we've seen in the video. So this is the sustainable placement that was given to us initially, which is, as you can see, there's a track here down the edge, which is the split of the landfill side. It was one of the whole roads into it. And this area that we've done in light brown is where the sustainable placement is. I think it's the next slide, 1103, which then follows on down to Harville Road. You can see Park Lodge Farm to your right, our cottage, Lower Lodge, to the bottom left, and there's actually in the village of Harefields here, there's a further cottage that belongs to the... So this area is obviously our part of the farm. Round to your...
Next slide.
Next to the next slide, please. This is the area that the electric feeder station... I'm sorry about the accuracy of this. It's just a guide, sorry. But obviously gives you a guide of the safeguarding area, the electric feeder station, Harefield Village, the lake, of Howick, and obviously the tree displacement that would be put to mitigate all this afterwards. Okay. Just while we're on the subject of the farm, we do have 3 families on the farm with 2 part-time workers plus the family itself, and they're housed in the 2 cottages that we described. So they're obviously very affected. You can see the pylon on the very bottom of the picture, and these are the pylons that would then be subject to change to take the electric lines. Can we move on to the next, please? Okay, so that gives us an idea visually of what it looks like. We've heard a lot over the last few days, and I don't want to go into too much detail on some of the ideas that was brought up, but obviously we have been advised that there's been a change to the sustainable placement. We don't know if that's for real or not for real, but there's been a suggestion of that. This picture gives you an idea of the whole area that's affected by us as it stands prior to what we received 6 days ago. 6 days ago, I think we received it, or whatever. Like, so we have to go on the basis that that was the information we had, and we hadn't much time to deal with that since. As you can see from the period, there are haul roads put in place in this, and some of the other maps will follow that on. That take the material from where it's extracted, which is the Cop Hall area, and that then gets moved through the Dogs Trust Highway Farm, which is the Dogs Trust, which we suspect will have to be altered for them, and then goes on to what is the old workings of the New Year's Green landfill site. So all the haul roads go through New Year's Green landfill site under the current and new proposals. Okay. And that does not just for ourselves, but it also does further up in terms of landfill deposits as well. That all gets through the old workings of New Year's Green landfill site. Okay, pretty much it's impossible to avoid them. Okay, just to put it into context, the small triangular section of the New Year is the only virgin soil we have between ourselves and Park Lodge Farm. Everything else is the ex-landfill site. In 2011, the landfill site was deemed to have been upgraded to a special site due to groundwater contaminations. This affected us on the top because we couldn't achieve farm assurance on that land, as we couldn't identify the soil structure on the top of this land. That land was then made unavailable to us under that requirement, and we have very little agricultural ability from it because we cannot produce food from that land at this time. We did some surveys with the Environmental Protection Unit of London Borough Hillingdon, and the proposal was that it would take an £18 million improvement fund to recap the site, to reduce, because basically one of the key contingencies of the workings is that it percolates water too quickly through it. This catches the leachate, and the leachate then is drawn into the aquifer in a quick way under certain climatic conditions, and that has an effect on Ickingham Water Treatment Plant, which was closed for a period of 6 years. That drift of water travels south from the site mainly across the line of what's the proposed viaduct, that towards the Ickingham Treatment Plant. As a result, like between ourselves and London and LBH, it was decided that we should suspend this area as agricultural use in the normal sense of food production, and we do it as a sustainable habitat at the present moment.
The leaching of the potentially polluted water, is it?
Yeah. In other words, we have followed that up with further testing being done of the leachate, and the EA and them are doing further that, and then a decision will be made at some point down the line, at which point somebody will have to remediate this area. So the area is integral to, if you like, the water quality of the future. The main reason for that is obviously the penetration of it. We had hoped that HS2 would look at this site for sustainable placement. And we were quite happy to see that they had looked at one specific area off it on the previous proposal. One of the main reasons for that is that we feel that sustainable placement on virgin green land in the green belt is crazy. The moving of material to other areas is pretty much just as crazy as the first one. And this is probably the only area that genuinely requires the type of material that will be coming out of the Cock Hill area. The Cock Hill area will be mostly London clay, and that material would be very suitable to the needs of improving the New Year's Green Lane farm site. It was suggested on a conversation that we had with the Buckingham Group that was involved in it in 2011 that type of material would be required in the region of 2 million cubic metres for this site. The site actually lies below the level at which it was originally. As you can imagine, it was started to be extracted just after the war. The green sand was extracted from it, which rebuilt London, and basically the material coming back out the other way was put back in. There are no records of that, and that's why it's created a problem, and there was no records up to 1974, and no testing was done up until 2002. As I say, we feel that there's a huge potential here to improve the water within the borough long term by sustainable placement over this through measures from HS2 of improving that site so that the penetration is reduced, that water is then taken from that site through land drains to the edge, which then helps to create a void, if you like, within that area, which then helps to encourage the leachate to stay in rather than move out. And these are some of the proposals that were already in place, if you like, by the borough. We're not quite sure where the 60 million figure that came up with on Monday came from, but it certainly didn't come from their own team. And it certainly vastly exaggerates what we found in 2011. There may be reasons for that may come out at a later date. But I think it's fairly clear that we would be requesting, if we could, that HS2 looks at this site further. We are obviously quite disappointed that they haven't investigated the area as a potential source for, we would call it dumping, but obviously sustainable placement would be the right answer in this case, and actually it makes sense to call it sustainable placement in this particular case.
Essentially, that would cap what's there at the moment, so any new water doesn't go through, goes around the side.
Basically, a simple way of putting it is you create a dome cap with a drainage system through it at less than probably 5 yards apart, 4 metres, apart. Drainage system that would then go to the edges, take it as clean water off, and that filtration not going through would mediate the leachate that then would go into the aquifer below. If we can keep this under 2.5 metres across the whole site, and preferably under 2, and if you can imagine, we've got a site of over 80 hectares, the actual pressure that would create is very low. And I can only go by the engineers that told us in 2011, but the belief was that pressure that would be exerted from the extra material would be very small in relation to the gain from the leachate not going through, as it is for most sites that are built today. Unfortunately, this site was built before 1974, and if you like, the Environment Act and the changes that were needed to do these properly weren't brought in till later. So our viewpoint is make something right for the community, make something right for ourselves. This gives us the opportunity as farmers also to stay here. Without it, we have no chance, because as you can imagine, with over 80 hectares of wax taking place on the site, plus the loss of this land already, we're over 150, 160 hectares combined, and that would mean it's unviable as a business entity. But we also believe that the community needs to get something back from this project, and clean water would be a very good source of that. Okay. Can we move on to the slides? Next slide, please. Alright, you can see this is obviously an aerial photo that shows you, obviously as a map. Can we carry on? As you can see from this, we also have quite a bit of reclamation after the sustainable placement. This is the new sustainable placement, which shows that New Year's Green landfill site has been removed. Yeah, I have to question why. That surely it should have been expanded, not removed, would be the option. It's been removed up here, that part just up here, and the idea now is to take this material and transport it, which I think shows in the next map that we'll move to, shows that it transports mostly by rail line. Well, if we've got so much free rail line, why are we building another rail line anyway? So there has to be a real question mark of whether that's feasibly possible at all. We also have sustainable placement being put down here near the Ickingham houses, which are obviously objecting greatly to it. Sustainable placement put here on what's all virgin soil. This has now been extended to the other side, as we'll see on further maps. To the other side of Harville Road, which I think we suggested yesterday, creates a double movement across Harville Road. By doing what we are doing, we're taking all material from Cork Hall and from the tunnels at North Holt and West Portal, and everything would never reach Harville Road. It would move on to an area that here goes straight across onto the landfill site, therefore avoiding any lorry movements, industrial movements on Harville Road while sustainable placement's taking place. Although it's logic, I'm sorry, I'm here, I'm a realist, I understand what's going on, there's politics being played on both sides, but this is easily the most sensible option to the problems that we have in terms of sustainable placement for this area. Although I think there's probably been a lack of information on the landfill site, which has been probably not given by LBH, and I'm as critical of them as I am of HS2, but it's HS2 prerogative to find out what they have. After all, they were going to do a sustainable placement on a third of the site up until last week. That to have identified what it takes, what the information is required and the cost achieved with that. I'm not quite sure that's my job as a poor innocent little farmer, but I think somebody needs to ask the questions, whether it be yourselves or others, why we haven't identified if this is feasible or not, and what the cost implications of that would be, against a railhead taking material, as it's now being suggested, to other parts of the country, and the costs there at $13.50 or whatever it is per unit. Can we move to the next slide, please? Can we move on? I think we've covered this. Yeah, please, to that one. Yeah. This is obviously the new idea. Now, what I'm going to take you through here is that if we did a similar arrangement onto this area, we would remove the same area around the Ickingham houses. We'd remove the crossover on Harville Road with the double movement back and forth as this pile got fed to the railhead. we would also remove 2 sites that are a number of distance away, 2 of which actually are on top of a recently put in major gasworks. So once again, I question the engineering that's being done, and this is the 3rd proposal we've had, and clearly these 2 sites cannot be used because of the site location, with a major gas line having only went through there less than 5 years. Less than 5 years from today. Where's the engineering report for that? The small site is obviously on us. It's actually just left of the gas line in that particular area, so it leaves only that one, and these placements here as the only suitable sites for HS2. As this proposal stands, and I've only seen it 5 days. Okay, I'm no engineer, but these things are there, and these things should have been seen by HS2. Okay, how many trains can we take away from this site to get 1.5 million cubic metres if we manage to use that within this area, 500,000? We've got to cut 1.5 million out of this rail line. Question marks, how do we achieve that if this rail line's so full that we have to build a high-speed rail line? But New Year's Green Lane landfill site. How much does it remediate, and how sensible an option is that? Okay. The feeder station, obviously you've heard a lot obviously on that from LBH. I'm not going to get into the pros and cons of that. I'm very proactive in terms of I want to see, improvements being made. If I have to be the sacrificial lamb for that, then, maybe that's the requirement that is needed. The key aspect here is to keep the community safe, the community happy, and whatever is the right solution, and usually the guys for that, you will make the decision. Obviously, I would prefer it back at West Ruislip, because that would mean I wouldn't lose this area and the land that's obviously connected to it. Of that. But as you can see, I'm affected by haul roads, even within this, the electric substation, the major realignment satellite compound, which is obviously quite huge, of that, and obviously all the mitigations that go in afterwards. And it still comes out, I think, just over 70 hectares in total that's taken from me completely over time, not including the areas that are just within the safeguarding rules at this point in time. Okay, I want to survive here. I love the community. I've been 10 years in it. I love the farm. My daughters wanted to farm there. That's why we aim for a 50-year contract. And I want to do right by the community as well. And that means making right something that's wrong, fulfilling some potential land use for me in the future, and encompassing 2 problems of sustainable placement and national water in one idea. And I only ask that they look at it strongly and ask you to do so.
Okay.
Alright, can we move on? Without this we're out anyway, but we've been very clear on the situation we're in. We are nobodies. We don't mean to be anybody. We don't intend to be important. We believe, in infrastructure. We believe in the projects that are taking place, but we just wanted to be treated fairly from it. Okay? Obviously, this one's not any use to me. Go on, please. Sorry. Where are we now? I'm going to move on to the other part of the area we're involved in, which is Jew's farmhouse. This is a still photograph of the house that's been taken out. I'm not going to argue over the detail of the line, but it's roughly exactly where it's meant to be. You can see the feeder station. It actually goes beyond that bounds that's showing there, and it shows you the beauty of the area it's in. I'm just going to take you through Mr. Ryle's business and house and home that's being affected by that, if you don't mind. Could we start the video?
Do you want the video?
Please.
EL05.
EL05.
06 and
08. 06 and 08, I'm told. Okay, this is Joe's farmhouse from the direction. You've probably seen it when you visited the location when you were down at Howick. As you can see, Howick's just to the left of this. Of that.
Which is the house going to be
Demolished?
That one.
That is the one.
That is the one.
Is this the house where a chap who won the BC used to live?
Yeah, the plaque there you actually seen on the wall there just as we came to it. This is also a house that's been... We're in reverse order here, so I'm sorry, they're not in order, but don't worry about it. This is a swinging round, so you see the area here is where the substation goes for the electric. We're swinging round now, so you see into Howick's Lake, and where the viaduct would then go through the tree area here. I'll go through across the lake. We then swing round into the house itself, which is Jew's farmhouse. All the land up to this side is what you term as Jew's farm, but obviously goes as part of it.
Can we play the next one, 06? It's the only way, sorry, we could get it to go through to you.
We do apologise about this, but we were having technical problems getting the videos. I'm not an expert, it's my daughter. It looks like it's going to come backside for it. Here's Joe's farmhouse. I'm sorry about the quality, but we couldn't get it through in high definition. But this is the farmhouse. I think you can see the beauty of the house. The house, it's got quite a lot of historic significance. The Queen Elizabeth visited it in 1901. She actually used it, we believe, as a holiday home. Cecil Knowles was the guy you see in the plaque on the barn. He was born in this house and obviously received the Victoria Cross and received the plaque for it. He was born here in 1894 and obviously received the Victoria Cross, I think, at Parsondale, is that correct? So it is a house with a lot of history to it. There's actually quite a few other areas in which the house has been involved that we're not going to go into, but I think we're going to make it fairly clear it's got a lot of history to it. This house was only identified as being taken out in 2013. I'm quite sure HS2 is going to give us the dates that may involve that, but around June 2013. Up until that, it was going to encompass past this house. Mr. Ryle and his family, as much as they, didn't like the feeling of the viaduct going past and felt that obviously that was better than losing the home, only to find that they did so in the decision that was taken, I think, in June 2013. Something like that. Anyway, we'll go into it, they can tell you. It doesn't really matter. It's the key aspect is that the house and the alignment was changed in 2013, we'll say, or whatever. And that decision obviously meant that the family home here, which I have to say holds 4 generations, it's the granny 88, the auntie 88, Ron and his wife Anne 67, and Anne will give us a date of birth, but the daughter here, Crystal, which is here today with us today, and her son Max, and they all live within the property. It's a lovely house and really worth a look inside to establish what he's done. He acquired the house in 2005 from LBH. His family had lived there since the 1960s, and they've been intricately linked to that house since then. And he got the opportunity under Maggie's infamous scheme of buy your own council house, shall we say, in a slightly different right to buy in 2005. He's lived down the lane, and his family lived down that lane all the way through that period. The garages are MC, which we'll see in a slide in a minute, are only around 200 yards up from the site. They lose the paint workshop, and the road that you've seen of the. Can you play AL0106, please?
I think it's the one that showed it, I think.
AL05, sorry, AL05
No, it's
again.
5 or 6, I can't remember what one.
If we go back to that, sorry, all that, we're going to show you that. Here you are. There's the garages, which are just up the lane by 200 yards. As you can see, it's a beautiful, picturesque lane. The lane here, all that, and obviously this house here is where Ron's son also lives with his girlfriend and daughter as well. So it gives you an idea of how encompassed they are to the lane. These are guys that have spent their life trimming, cleaning on their own being, even though Howick belongs below it, that lane, to keep it tidy. They lock the gate every night before he goes to bed, and he opens the gate for everybody that goes into the lane first thing in the morning. As you can see by the gardens and the picturesque nature, they take a real pride in what they've got here. It's got, in my eyes, I've got some beautiful parts of the country in Scotland, but this is as nice as I've seen.
Which part of Scotland did you come from?
Stranraer.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some beautiful bits up the west coast for there. I would advise you to go there if you get the chance. Anyway, moving on. The left-hand side of the lane you've just seen, or the right-hand side, sorry, of the lane is to be doubled up for a construction road. This removes his paint workshop, which is on the right-hand side of the road, with the left-hand side being severely affected by, obviously, these vehicle movements. We would ask the question, why are the vehicle movements required, as most of it's taking place off the blue square that you see at the top, and is there a need for that? Ron is asking specifically, and so are we, and we're willing to give that, even though it takes further on our land, that the alignment of the viaduct is moved north. And we would ask that HS2 looks at that in detail, as that would also help in the HOAC proposal and might give us an opportunity to reuse HOAC within the existing site. Okay, this would alleviate a historic building, it would alleviate HOAC. There would be some implications, I'm quite sure, and I'll probably go into that, but I'm quite sure there's a compromise can be made north of this line. The line has already been moved north 65 metres, they will tell us. I do not see a reason why it can't be moved further north again. That would give this family the opportunity to live in the family home they've built and worked in and set their heart soul from the word go. These guys will live through HS2 if you leave their home alone. Okay? That's how important it is to them. Treat them fairly. Treat them correctly. I can't be any more impassioned about that. That's how much this home means to them. The history of this home has got to be the biggest in the village of Harefield as well. And that should be pointed out. I know it wasn't listed, and that may be one of the issues that created the problem that allowed this to happen, but that doesn't stop you guys recognising the importance of the property today. And obviously, you know, for Jeff's position, just off the slide, because HOAC is literally just off the slide. All that. Can we move?
Do you want to see anything else or anything else?
No. Okay, this is giving you a broad overview of it. We wanted to stick to the green ones. We're doing this off the cuff. I do apologise. I'm a bit, you know, of that. We really do want to get through, and we don't want to do it, you know, through whatever. You can obviously see Jew's farmhouse in the green section has been, you know, at this point in time is showing a slightly south. It's actually going through the house more. Howick is obviously to the south. RMC Garages is the grey area, with the purple area being their son John's house just there. That's all within 200 metres. The garage that's being removed is to the south of that Juice Farm cottage, which is there, as you see on the pointer, and that's to allow the double track haul road. Okay, so this guy and myself, at the present moment, are the two major victims, along with Howick, of the construction through the Combe Valley. And we would simply ask that we are treated fairly.
Okay.
Howie, just to recap, when you said you would like to see it go to the north of Jews Farmhouse, to save Jews Farmhouse, which is the route it would take? It would just be, how far north would it be?
Well, we're looking at moving this line to up here,
Yeah.
which would then mean that most of the lake could be retained. There might be some we might have to look at the implications to the marina beyond. Okay. The reasons for the realignment before, and I'm quite sure HS2 will confirm this, is that the EA had a concern about one of the pillars on the river cone, and the realignment was done on one pillar being placed in the river on the river cone. Now, this seems strange, as Mr. Morris commented on Monday or Tuesday, that the actual span length of each part of the viaduct hadn't been agreed. So how a realignment was taken on the basis of that pillar being in the river cone, not knowing the span width of the viaduct, makes me question why it was done. I believe it was probably done to try and alleviate the concerns at Howick. I believe that they didn't go far enough. Okay? I don't believe it was over a pillar on the river cone. Okay?
Thank you. That's
Are
very
you,
clear.
are you just about there?
Yeah, finished.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. I hope it didn't sound too onerous. It's a bit new to us.
From Ron as well, or is
Well, there's a lot going on your farm.
I think Ron would like to just say a few words
Do you want to say
first, just to give a feeling of how he's feeling.
If you can imagine, 10 years ago I took this place on. It was nearly derelict, and I've spent 10 years putting it back as it is now, into the condition that it's in. And if I have it taken away from me, there's no way in the world at my age I'm going to be able to do another 10 years of reconstruction on a place that's like it. And there is no place like it, believe me, we've looked. There's no place like this in the area, nothing. It's the second oldest building in Harefield. It's over 400 years old. And I put my heart and soul into it. And if I'm going to have it taken off of me, I hope I'm going to be treated very fairly, because I hope they're going to be able to find me somewhere like it. Because I certainly can't, and I've really looked.
Nothing's been offered.
Nothing's
We've
been
done a lot of
offered,
work for
nothing's
Howick,
been
but
done, nothing
nothing
at all.
for ourselves at all.
No.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry if I missed it at the start. You own the farm, Ron, and Ian and Susan are your farming tenants, is that
No.
right?
No, they're separate.
They only own the farmhouse.
They have a
itself.
farmhouse.
and garbage?
And the farm itself, the land belongs to...
London Borough, Hillingdon, and rented to ourselves.
I'm sorry I missed that, exactly. So it's
Okay.
I own Jew's farmhouse.
exactly,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
People have tried to split Juice Farm and Park Lodge Farm, but Juice Farm and Park Lodge Farm are the same. It's only the house that isn't, which
Yeah.
was sold.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for clarifying
Okay.
that. It's very helpful.
Awful lot happening to your farm, isn't there? One way or the other.
I think it's fair to say that we took the brunt of the Combe Valley.
Okay. A railway landed on it.
I think I looked at a Chesham and Amersham slide only a few minutes ago that said there's 250 hectares affected over the whole of their area,
Yeah.
and we're affected by 87. without a safeguarding, without anything.
Okay.
And I think the only other area we would like to ask is we're tenant farmers. LBH are unable to sell. It's within the requirements of the agreement they had when they took the farms, because the farms were obviously taken over to help after the war, you know, to create food production, you know, and whatever else. And the agreement that was made in 1938 and then subsidiary followed with the Greenbelt Act, you know, means that they are unable to sell the farm. We'll have to forgo whatever's taken from it. But as tenants, we are obviously, you know, we have spent nearly £800,000 since 2004 on the farm.
Yeah.
And
that's been involved in
that
buildings,
infrastructure,
stock,
milking parlour, stock,
fencing,
etc., land regeneration, and we've already lost 80 hectares at this time, which we believe can be remediated to a suitable standard for farm assurance of that, and we believe that without both there is no way we can barely survive as it is just now with the loss of the 80 hectares.
Okay, well let's go to HS2 then. Thank you very much, Mr. Howie. Mr. Straw.
Yes, there are a number of points to deal with, and I'll try and take them in order. I think it's probably best if I start with the question of the alignment. And the position about the alignment, as I'm sure the committee is aware, is that the choice of the alignment has come about after a very detailed process of considering the balance between the pros and cons of where precisely the alignment goes through this particular location. There is quite a lot of detailed history in terms of the choice of the alignment, and some of it's been referred to by Mr. Howie. Indeed, the realignment that took it closer to Mr. Ryle's property, with the result that that is now required for the scheme, was the subject of consultation in 2013, I think. So it was a process of a decision to move it further to the north. There are a number of factors involved, and if I just give you a flavour, because I know you're familiar with the competing considerations, there is the issue of the River Colne, there's Save Farm on the other side, the realignment, the listed buildings on the other side, it pushes it further away. There is, of course, also the consideration of where the route continues towards Broadwater Lake and the issues there. So currently the alignment avoids Broadwater Lake as it sits on the western side. I fully understand that the consequence of the realignment was to bring it so it affects Mr. Ryle's property, and that is now proposed and was proposed in 2013 with the result that his property is required for the scheme. And plainly that means if the scheme goes ahead in that form, his property would be compulsorily acquired. That is the subject of correspondence we had with Mr. Ryle and his family in 2013, which I've got in front of me. The important point about it is I'm not underplaying the effect on him and his family, but the important point about what he came to at the end about being treated fairly is in circumstances where his property is required, it would be the subject of the compensatory measures that occur from compulsory acquisition of someone's home. And those, in our letter to him in 2013, we made that clear, and we also suggested that he take advice, which of course is part of the compensatory measures, take advice on that compulsory acquisition at that time. This is not a criticism at all, Mr. Ryle. As I understand it, he hasn't taken that forward at the moment, but of course he can do, and I can give him a copy of that letter again if that would assist.
I think just out of that, you still haven't really clarified why the decision of that particular line was taken.
Well, as I said,
why was the movement required? I must have missed that. Sorry,
That's right.
So,
There are a number of considerations. And if
P6292 is the
6292.
It's about this morning's.
Oh, is it from an earlier?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
no, it's the one from Jeff this morning. One from Jeff this morning. Jeff or somebody this morning. The Rowing Club.
Gets it.
yeah. Yeah, it's probably simplest if I try and explain some of the competing considerations. The Save Farmers towards the left. This shows the alignment as it's currently being promoted.
Yeah.
The line was moved, as it indicated, in 2013 prior to consultation. Moved away from Save Farm and Save Lake. It was brought closer, consequently, towards Harefield, but the impacts of moving it yet again closer more to the north have further impacts on Harefield, and the line, as you can see, as it crosses the Hoap Lake and then the canal, avoids going into Broadwater Lake, as we've looked at in some detail in other petitions.
Would it not be fair to say that an alignment movement at Hoap of a distance would not have to replicate itself all the way across that line? So therefore, by the time you reach the Denham end of the alignment, the alignment adjustment would be less so there, as the swing is obviously naturally that way anyway.
Well, I think the answer, I can ask Mr. Smart to address that if it's necessary. The answer to that is, as the committee will know, is that the alignment is required to have certain operational requirements in terms of its curves and speeds. It's not a simple question of moving one part of the route across.
Can you just point out where Mr. Rao's home is?
Yes,
just here.
Mr. Rao's home is just
about
off
an inch
the
to
screen.
the right.
Just here.
Just here, just off the screen.
Do we have another photo montage of the land to the right? We don't.
No, I don't. No.
Effectively, the pillar sits right in the middle of his living room as it stands. So the left-hand side of the home, right, the pillar sits in.
Can I just like to I'll ask Mr. Smart to come deal with the lines if necessary. It is reported in the ES. Can I just deal with some of the other things first, and then you can ask Mr. Smart some questions about the line. Can I just go back to the construction and operation plans, please? P6432. Was it? Sorry, P6342. And I think I just need to recap on where we've got to in relation to sustainable placement. What you've got on the screen is the hybrid build construction plan, and if I can show you P6343 as well.
Yeah, it's just the final one.
The operational scheme for the hybrid build. And as we've been hearing yesterday, there, under the hybrid build scheme, there was proposed a sustainable placement area in the area marked green, which Mr. Howie has described. The principle that we've been trying to respond to is, as a result of objections to sustainable placement in this area, notably amongst from South Harefield residents and Harefield residents, amongst others, which you heard in March, is a general reduction in sustainable placement in this area. And one of the things that's been done is through the AP proposal is to remove that sustainable placement area from the scheme And I can show you that from P6346. It comes on screen. And you can see from P6346 that under the additional provision proposal, the intention is to remove the sustainable placement area that was in the bill, and the reason or the way that is achieved is by a more effective use of sustainable placement in the other areas and a general reduction in sustainable placement overall from the scheme. If I can just, I don't know if the cursor can point out, there in this area, which does affect Mr. Howie's land, there's still proposed sustainable placement, but as you've heard, the general principle is we'll try and reduce any sustainable placement as and when the scheme proceeds. What Mr. Howie is referred to is he would like to see the sustainable placement area we've removed reinstated. And extended. Hillingdon, in the course of the evidence they gave, and indeed the Peter Brett report that you heard about, costed the use of that area for sustainable placement in the region of £60 million because of the remediation costs that were proposed. And that's evidence that came from Peter Brett Associates on the instructions of Hillingdon, and Hillingdon are of course the freeholders of this land and the land which requires remediation. We have been able to remove that sustainable placement area from the bill, which satisfies, not entirely, but satisfies a number of residents who are concerned about sustainable placement around Harefield, and that means that that area is no longer required for the scheme. And Mr. Howie, I think, asked for some assurance that that was going to be the case. And if I could just show you P63523, we have written to Mr. Howie, I think, as he said 6 days ago, where we've given that assurance to him. So there's no uncertainty about it. It's in black and white. The intention is not to use that parcel of land for the scheme, which is coming up on the screen here. Plot 720D. I think if we can go, I had to take you back to P6346.
Can I just point out, just on 6346, he mentioned the green area here, which obviously was to be sustainable placement within my land.
Yep.
And this is the area that the gas pipeline that was only put in 5 years ago was placed. So once again, I would question the engineering reports that were done for all this.
I'll come to that because I think either Mr. Smart or Mr. Miller can deal with the considerations that have gone in, but I'd just like to deal with the broad picture as to what's going on in this area. Under the scheme, you'll see the darker green is also mitigation planting, which goes in on top of certain sustainable placement areas. Indeed, there's woodland planting in this location where the cursor is.
Is any of that on Mr. Howie's land?
A small portion is, yes. That's the edge of his land that you referred to.
Yes. All this area here,
yes,
about 35, 40 hectares, 30 hectares.
Yes.
And could I...
Small.
Can I just deal with another consideration which has gone into the selection of indeed sustainable placement sites? It's not something Mr. Howie's referred to, and we've got a plan in the environmental statement if necessary. Can I just show you round the cursor? This is the site Mr. Howie's referring to, where there has been previous waste incorporated into the site. There is a floodplain in this area which covers quite a considerable portion of this area that he was referring to. And of course, in the selection of a sustainable placement site, one of the considerations is the floodplain and not putting more material into the floodplain. The consequence of doing that, of course, is then you have to create a compensatory floodplain, which requires even greater land take. So some of these areas have been ruled out on that basis as part of the sustainable placement SIP.
I think you'll find that isn't floodplain, so...
Well, I have the advantage of the environmental statement map here, which has the floodplain areas, it is in the environmental statement, which has the floodplain areas located. So there are
just one very quick point. The compensation for the sustainable placement activities will it be on a per tonnage basis or a per hectare basis? And will it go to the landlord or the tenant?
Sorry, I didn't catch the
compensation.
Yes,
payments for the sustainable placement.
It's the land. It's the land value. It's the land taken is the basis of the compensation, as I understand it.
But will it be returned?
Well, there are provisions. In certain circumstances, it can be returned. For example, as you may, I think. We've explained in relation further up the line.
Yes,
if there's planting involved on top of land which is mitigation planting, there may be the scope to return it, subject to suitable covenants as to the upkeep of the mitigation planting, because of course the principle is the railway needs to be mitigated, and if we're putting in mitigation planting, it needs to be maintained. So those are potential, those are possibilities for return, but they are subject to that safeguard.
I think at this time, according to what's suggested, all sustainable placement areas will not be returned. They're all going back to trees and shrubs or whatever as mitigation.
Sorry, I think we're at cross purposes. Returned. They may not be returned to farmland if they're going to be planted for woodland. If they're physically going to, land ownership can be returned to the original landowner in certain circumstances where there's agreement as to the future maintenance of mitigation planting.
Yeah. And can I just be clear again? The actual acreage or hectareage you're going to lose, Mr. Howie, is what again? Is 18?
On the previous, it was 87. I think that's been reduced through this area by 16 hectares.
I think I've got a figure of 24 hectares reduction. The area we've excluded from sustainable placement, I think, is in the area in the region of 24 hectares.
Yes. And just out of interest, do Hillingdon in the land portfolio have other land they can make available to you? Is there any other land nearby that Hillingdon could rent to you?
No, not at this time. Yeah, they do have an estate, but obviously the tenants are on long-term.
They're already tenants on it, of course.
Estate.
And as far as you're aware, there's no land that is coming up for renting out.
We will go out of business. It's simple as that, or we have to find a placement somewhere out of the area, if that's achievable.
We're quite happy to move out of the area if
it
has to be.
If it has to be,
obviously. Let me just try and finish, then you can ask some questions if you need of Mr. Smart or Mr. Miller. Can I just deal with the impact on the farm?
Yeah.
There will be an impact, plainly, on Mr. Howie's farm, and you've heard about the extent of the land take. We readily accept that, and it's identified as an impact in the environmental statement. And of course, Mr. Howie has a degree of choice in these circumstances. It would be open to him, if he considered that the resulting position is unacceptable, to serve a blight notice on HS2 as a result of the compulsory acquisition of his land. Alternatively, with the land that is not affected, and his land ownership extends, I'll just take the blue arrow, there's a lot of farming land up here, which is, I understand, still productive. Alternatively, if he wants to stay, of course, that's open to him, subject to the compensation that he would receive as a leaseholder of this farm in relation to his lease, subject to that compensation. I just draw that to your attention because he is a tenant farmer. The London Borough of Hillingdon is the freeholder of the land. So there is that choice, and I'm not seeking to suggest there's no impact on his farm. There plainly is, but we have sought to limit the land take from his farm and indeed from the area around the viaduct. Can I just show you on this plan the other part of Park Lodge Farm, which is affected south of Harbour Road, is required for the National Grid feeder station and the mitigation planting around it, and of course the auto transformer station necessary for the HS2 scheme. That's the current position. I'm going to ask, I think it may be helpful if Mr. Smart, can Mr. Smart please just come and address you on the alignment? Okay. Mr. Smart, first of all, can I just ask you if you can assist in relation to the alignment, route alignment? I was explaining the considerations that have gone into the route alignment and the move of the route alignment 60 metres to the north in 2013 and matters of that kind. Mr. Howie's raising the prospect of another change to the route alignment, potentially to the north. And he raised, amongst other things, whether it could be a smaller change, local change to the route alignment to avoid, in particular, Mr. Ryle's house, you may recall. Can I just get you to comment on whether that sort of change is feasible for this scheme?
Yes. I think this committee's heard before with these alignments that you and the speed that we go at, or indeed, we're not at the high speed through these parts, so we've already got a curve that's more relaxed, if I could say. And we've threaded the railway through the Con Valley in a way that we've previously described, looking carefully at the balance of effects as we go through there. So it isn't possible just to tweak the alignment in the way that the petitioner has suggested. I do understand the issues that he's raised, and we can't just do a tweak over that sort of a distance. So it would mean that the whole curvature, which we need for the track geometry, would have to change more dramatically than the tweak he suggests. Now that would then have more wider effects than just missing the farmhouse by the 60 metres. So I think you've already heard about the issues around Broadwater Lake, etc. It would push the line more towards Harefield. And indeed, further south towards Ruislip, there would be implications of how we could enter into the tunnel to the south, which would take into account different trajectory and would change some of the buildings that are affected there. And I think if perhaps I could slightly illustrate this by, we do have, I think, slide P22.
Well, I was just going to get I've just put a slide on, but on the screen, which is one of the slides showing the noise contours of the existing route. But if this isn't of help to you, Mr. Smart, we'll get the other slide you want.
Well, I think it is. It does show you the effects of the noise on the communities in the area, and you can see that by moving that alignment we would start to affect more significant areas with noise. So we've looked very carefully at this alignment, and we believe that we have got that balance, and because of the track geometry criteria that I've mentioned, we just can't do a localised tweak in the way that the petitioner has suggested.
Sorry, just before we get to the west end of the this open space, here, if you did go, I don't know what, 60 metres to the north, that presumably would raise the noise a bit at South Harefield.
Yes.
To the civic community side. It would increase the noise to the civic community side, but not to the village of Harefield.
Is that right? Well, maybe I should have said. Maybe I should ask a question. What would be the effects if you could come out from Ruislip, slightly to the north, slightly change the angle you come out, and as you get to the far end, where there's another double loop.
Yes.
It's easy, I think it's easy. And this noise thing may matter, maybe the consideration. If you went back to the 6292, there seems to be a sort of a double change upon the west end.
Montage, 69.
And there's a jink at the top.
Yeah.
Because of the radius of curve that you have to look at here, and we are on over 5,000 metre curves on this alignment, it goes back quite a long way, Peter, so it's difficult to just look at it in the context of this slide. So what this kind of moves the whole sort of central gravity of the route. So yeah, we've certainly looked at this, and we can give some more information to the petitioner if that helps to illuminate the issues. But it's not really possible just to kind of say, well, you know, here's how to do this, and there are, you know, the entry to the Ruislip portal will be along a different alignment, and we'll certainly go through more buildings. I think you can see there's impact on the marina. I think the water ski area as well, and so I think, you know, it is something that, as we've discussed before, when you do these changes, everything starts to unravel.
Yeah, but Mr. Smart, I think what he's suggesting is, and obviously I'm not quite sure you gave us the answer, is that a realignment slightly north would surely have a straighter end into the denim end of the viaduct.
Well, I think the answer is that the alignment has to meet some quite stringent criteria in terms of both localised curvature of elements along this over 3 kilometre section, and indeed the overall curvature of that alignment, which is around about over 5,000 metres. So when you put all that together, what I'm trying to say is it isn't possible just to shift in a small area. So you have to look at what that does when you move those curves as you go along the route. So it's not quite as simple as just saying it would just be there. So we have looked at this alignment, and for me to go through and give you more details on what that would all mean, it's certainly possible. It's not quite possible right now.
I think what you might kindly remind us, if you see where it says Townhouse Lane Overbridge,
yes,
the arrow pointing up to the overbridge, that appears to be a redundant sort of S-shaped bend. Is it because there's a lot of housing around there that they're trying to miss?
Yes, there's, and also with the water ski club, I think, is shown there.
That's to the north.
And
if you follow up where the Townhouse Overbridge is, it appears to be rather further north than it need be if you're trying to go straight into Chiltern Tunnel. And I seem to remember we actually had housing there, which was one of the reasons for trying to.
We have, and we've got other implications of the alignment as it goes into the Chiltern Tunnel and then 25 as well.
I may ask Mr. Miller just to come in and explain, but there, in addition to the engineering considerations, there are a number of competing environmental and residential and other activities considerations going on in the selection of the route, and it's quite difficult to see all of those details from this particular photograph. I can remind you of some of the petitions we've already heard from others, the marina being one, which they already think it's too close to their facility.
Slightly more detailed response, just a short paper, just detail with a bit more detail about what the implications would be, because clearly there will be implications, and I think that would probably better do it that way.
Surely we have to compare that to the devastation to Howick and Juice Farmhouse.
Yes,
well, I think
to get a proper.
And then we could get the input from Mr. Miller and everybody else into that.
I think what would be quite helpful for Mr. Miller, I think, just to deal with briefly, if it helps, and we can put it in writing, but he can just run through the points if it's convenient.
Okay, well, we're in the middle of a division at the moment, so I better say order, we'll be back hopefully in 15 minutes. I think we'll kick off. Are we going to hear from you, Mr. Miller, or?
Mr. Miller, ask Mr. Miller to come and assist you in relation to some of the factors I was referring to just before the adjournment. Mr. Miller, we've got P6292 on the screen, which is the aerial montage. And I don't mind if you want to start towards the Chiltern Tunnel South Portal and move this way or the other way round. There's a regional map as well, if that assists us as we get into the foreground. But could you just explain some of the balance factors that have gone into the selection of the alignment?
Yes. Over the last couple of days, you've heard me talking about the route alignment being a coherent piece as an outcome. With this particular route alignment, I think the way to look at it is from tunnel portal to tunnel portal. And if you work from the right lip end, the sort of effects that we've been talking about, golf courses, sustainable placement, viaduct, and all that sort of thing, we understand. What we did back in 2009 and 2010, leading up to the consultation, was to think about the route alignments, and we were very much on a single line kind of basis with the routes. And it's fair to say that we were making sort of various adjustments along the line of the route that you see here, that we settled on here today. And the reason why we see the route here today is the portal-to-portal position that I'm talking about. So, as we've gone through, what we've tried to do is, as Tim was trying to explain, strike a balance between the various effects that we come across cutting across the Colne Valley. It's true to say that back at West Ruislip, if you shift the route by 60 metres, you're shifting. You can't just shift it in a short step. You have to shift it over some distance. So it's a bit like the tail kind of, or the dog wagging its tail, or the other way around. So whatever you do here, you're moving things around over some distance. So it's not straightforward just to say, just shift it over here and it solves my problem. What you inherit is a range of other problems along the line of the route. So coming from West Ruislip, you move yourself away from the existing rail corridor, and what we're trying to do here is move from one transport corridor to another transport corridor, and that's the Chiltern Railway through.
Is the transport corridor coming away from that railway line down in the middle at the bottom?
It is. That's the Chiltern Railway.
So you've got somewhere away from it already by the time you get to Mr. Rao.
That's right. Yeah. So we're moving away from that transport corridor to get into the A413 corridor, which is the Misbourne Valley that you heard from Mrs. Gillan earlier on today. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get across there, and as we saw the other day when we were out on the site visit, we're trying to get to that notch up by Wendover, that sort of long valley across the Chilterns with this particular route alignment. So there's no doubt that we've got a number of effects here, and we've listened to that over recent days.
I'm just going to ask you to put up P6338, because I think that's probably more helpful for the point.
Just what I was going to suggest.
Okay. Yeah. So here we are. We're down here with the tunnel portal. We're getting close into the transport corridor there, but as you go sort of further northwest, you're deviating away from that transport corridor to try and get into the A413 corridor, which is this road here, which is then going off to Wendover. So that's what we're trying to achieve overall here. And so then what we do is we look at all of the particular constraints along the line of the route, and we see whether we can strike a balance between all of those to see whether we can get the best outcome that we can. And on this route alignment, what we're balancing off are issues of the Colne Valley round by the canal basin that we've talked about, getting across the water to avoid the triple SI. Now, we haven't been able to do that. We haven't been able to get ourselves out of the triple SI, but you can see here that we're trying to avoid Denham Green and the properties there. and we're also trying to avoid South Harefield over here. Then we're going into the cutting here, into the agricultural land, which we've heard. The idea of this route alignment here is to tuck it into the side of the valley insofar as we can, to provide a visual screen. So, portal to portal, there are a range of issues that we've got to take into account. It's not without its problems, and on your side, what we end up with is a deep cutting that's the Coptal cutting, and we've heard about that in the last day or so. There's a lot of material that comes out of that, and what we've been doing is thinking about the traffic and transport effects in this local area. These are fundamental concerns, and probably the number one concern from the London Borough of Hillingdon, as we've heard, and the local residents of Ickenham. It's true for Harefield as well. So we've been thinking about that, and we've been thinking, well, what do we do with material coming out of tunnels, out of cuttings and so forth? And our response has been to provide sustainable placement, or other people call that dumping, spoil disposal, whatever you might want to call it. But that is the land area that we've put into the bill. The way we've looked at that is to try and bring that back into some form of amenity kind of use, that it has some other utility. And the response in this location is all about, it was principally about trying to take in the ecological effects, that sort of thing, landscape effects, and to provide the best response that we can in this area. And I've talked previously about the biodiversity, the woodlands, whatever, all trying to be joined up. So, in this location, the other thing is that people don't want the sustainable placement. I know you already do want the sustainable placement.
Well, can I just ask you to deal with that? Can we just look at 6346? That's the only other topic I wanted you to cover in terms of the selection of the sustainable placement sites. And this shows the removal of the site that was on Mr. Howie's land.
I think, Mr. Howie, you're unique in your position, that everybody else doesn't want this sort of thing going on, but you can see the practical utility in this sort of thing.
Sorry, Mr. Miller, that area that's been removed, that was an area proposed originally for sustainable placement, which was the subject of objection, I believe, from South Harefield residents and indeed Harefield residents as well.
It was, and a number of people have made representations on behalf of that community as a whole, and were particularly concerned about that piece of land and building it up, and the implications of building that up. So we've thought about that. We've also thought about our environmental response. Let me try and finish, and then we can take your questions. Sorry, you were going to.
If I just point to the area where there is sustainable placement, we see the dark green.
So those are that's the sustainable placement and the ecological mitigation. I think we were talking about woodlands yesterday in this area, as well as enhanced grassland and a sort of marshalling kind of response in this location for the effects that we're having elsewhere in the Calne Valley.
And Mr. Miller, I mentioned the effect of floodplain to the left. There's an area of floodplain in this location, isn't there, which affects the choice of that as a potential sustainable placement area.
You can't see this obviously on this map, but the water environment here is key through the Calne Valley, and we've heard that not just from us but from other petitioners how important that is. And in this location, there is in fact all the way through here, there are a range of floodplains that we have to take into account when we're thinking about our response, not only to building the railway, but to the mitigation or compensation response to things like biodiversity and that sort of thing. So where we're taking out the material from the Coptal cutting to get us into the place where we are preparing the ground for the Harville Road sidings, which ultimately gives us the route into the railway and the opportunity to move more material away by rail. that opportunity we're taking advantage of to reduce the sustainable placement areas in this location. We still have to move material around, and that material gets absorbed in this sort of area here. So what we're trying to do is provide the sustainable placement in a kind of a contiguous way in this location up on New Year's Green. I know that's not without its own problems, but it's also sort of following the line of that floodplain which is set out by the Environment Agency.
I just finally on P6346, Mr. Miller, in terms of the construction map, just to make clear what you were just referring to, the way the sustainable placements are located. This is 6346. P6348, sorry, my mistake. You'll see the yellow routes are haul routes which go up to the placement sites, and I think the one off to the left is in fact would no longer be necessary once the sustainable placement area is removed. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe that to be the case, because we end up with just dealing with the piling runs which you highlighted on your slides.
Thank you very much. Maybe Mr. Howie.
Just to go back.
Sorry, Mr. Howie, can we just have pointed out to us where is the landfill site that Mr. Howie was suggesting might be a good place to put some of the spoil on?
Yeah, you've got it coming through this area here. So part of that land, you know...
Is that all the bits that you've taken away from South Airfield?
Do you want me to show you?
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Basically, there was the area here to Harbour Road, and it follows the line right round to here, to the Dogs Trust. The Dogs Trust is just off at a highway farm, as you term it. So these haul roads are right through the heart of the landfill site that we talk about. Then back up here, following back, up here, along and back down to Park Lodge Farm. So it goes within 100 metres of...
You don't have to get too close to South Harefield for that?
No.
And that was there from 1942 right through to 1970.
And this you're saying is about 80 hectares?
80 hectares.
On which you could put 2.5 metres of spoil?
Yeah. It's around...
And it would do good as well as being acceptable?
Well, one of the floodplain issues is, maybe Mr. Miller could comment on this, but the floodplain mainly runs down along the canal and for a distance from the canal. Now, the unique nature of the landfill site itself as being designated a floodplain is just simply from the fact that the landfill wasn't reconstructed to the height of the original land. So it actually sits quite a distance below what should have been the original land size. In other words, there wasn't as much put back in as was dug out. And that created an artificially low, just on small sections. It doesn't cover the whole site. In fact, the area where they were going to talk about placement is not within this area, which is the reason they used it, but the larger section where the haul roads go through are right through the heart of what was considered to be the water.
One last question, if I may. I'm not saying what we would say, if we'd say anything at all, but were HS2 to agree with the tenant farmer and the freeholder, spoil placement that was in the sort of area he was talking about, that wouldn't necessarily, if by agreement, wouldn't necessarily require an additional provision or anything else like that?
If the London Borough of Hillingdon had a desire to look at that site and we had suitable material, there is a prospect of a commercial arrangement to be entered into. My guess is that it would probably have to have a range of approvals because we know that site has got a leachate problem. You don't get the problem that you've got with your agricultural land without a big problem on your hands. I take your point about the historic landfill, and that may well produce a floodplain there, but nevertheless, that is a floodplain on the map. So there is a pathway for the water, there is a pathway for the leachate. So there is a problem here which we cannot exacerbate. I think the view is that you try and leave alone at the moment, but in terms of the prospect of, where someone might say, you say 80 million, I don't know, if there was, if we had suitable material and there was arrangement with London Borough of Hillingdon as the freeholder here, and the Environment Agency, the lead local flood authority, could agree, well, it's Hillingdon anyway, could agree on the consenting arrangements, and that's not going to exacerbate the problem. There is a prospect of that. That's not part of our scheme.
Okay. That's helpful to me anyway.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, I was going to get the floodplain map on, up on screen, but I don't think that's necessary to do. It's in volume 5, and if I just indicate, just in answer to Peter's question, the area that's been removed is not in the floodplain, but that's the area closest to Harefield. The area to the right of the utility works, a significant portion of that is the floodplain. So I hope that explains the situation.
I'm sorry, Mr. Howie, I interrupted you. You were going to ask some questions.
Problem, yeah, that's great.
All yours.
So, I mean, I just felt obviously go with that. I mean, I think what we're looking at here is a situation where nobody has actually looked at the situation properly. There's an opportunity to do mediation for the community local. I think if the locals understood the benefits from that, and the engineering was designed properly. I know there's one area, and I'll flag it in just now, that was brought up to me by one of the HS2 members in the past, was that who would then, be required to do the testing of the site beyond the normal 5 years, is it? 5 years that you take on these types of placement sites. I'm quite sure negotiations could be done between all parties on that, as it is just now. I've got no question that LBH would want to be helpful in this, even if that didn't appear to be the case on Monday.
Okay. I think I think at the end of the day we all can see the benefits outweigh most of the other sustainable placement options.
Can I suggest, since you've made a suggestion, and I think it probably deserves some thought to whether or not it runs, that the London Borough of Hillingdon, yourself as the tenant and HS2, just have a chat about whether there is a mutual interest in and helping you out with your problem with contaminated water. Well, I think it's worth doing. If the scheme's going to go through and you're getting all the disadvantages, it's worth seeing whether or not we can find a solution.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're all happy with that.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, do you want any final comments, Mr. Howie?
No, I mean, I think at the end of the day we've covered most points. I mean, the only one I would have went back to was the previous comments that Mr. Miller made about the change of the alignment.
I think we're going to require a bit more information about that.
I think we need a bit more information.
A little bit more information about it.
After all, we're asking for it to be straighter than it is just now.
We're seeing it from the, if we follow that up, then it's probably the best way.
Well, we've got a number of decisions to make for the area, and clearly if we have a little paper from you with chapter and verse about the implications of change. I'm sure there will be big implications for changing the line, which will put additional provisions and everything else, but I just think it will be useful information for us to have before we come to our decisions. And again, as I say, a chat with the Mr. Howie and London Borough of Hillingdon and HS2 to see whether there is a mutual interest in the way you decide the issues going through that particular farm. Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Mrs. Howie, you were feeding the information. Who did the videos then?
Our daughter. Unfortunately, she had to leave because she had graduation this afternoon.
Anyway, thank you very much for your contribution and your suggestions. Order. If you could please clear the room.